Framed, Part 17. 17th of June. Cars today: red Ford car, Miss Stannard, petrol and Snickers. White Montego, Mr. Evans, returning box of fudge. Red Toyota Prius, T4 automatic, Dr. Ramanan and family. A social call, all had coffee. 2 white combi vans, men from the quarry, box of crispy chopped constables and a Tintoretto turnover. Vauxhall Astor Estate 1.9 CDTI, Mr. Davis, petrol, cigarettes, eggs, shoe polish, video, Shrek, plus VW Beetle, Audi Quattro, Subaru Forester, all visitors. Weather, sunshine. No, the first boy on the boat in lake since Mr. Davis saw Elvis. This is the utterly hectic day when I became first boy on the boat in lake since Mr. Davis saw Elvis, and it was all down to good customer relations, namely mine. I remember that Lester liked to open the box with the painting in on a Thursday evening, so Friday morning I asked Mum if she'd like to come and see the painting she picked, the one with the rowing boats. "I've got a lot on my mind," she said. "I don't think I'll bother." I think she was worried about our Marie. It was over a week now since the Selwoods had dropped off the painting, and in all that time no one had really seen Marie. Every morning she left early for school, padlocking her bedroom door behind her. As soon as she came home in the evening, she locked herself in again. The only time anyone saw her was when Mum called through the door and asked her to hold Max while she had a shower. Then Marie would take Max into her room for 10 minutes and we'd hear laughing noises and sometimes see a weird flash of light. But mostly, she was too cross to talk to. On Tuesday, for instance, I saw her on the landing, which was where we'd put the picture, and she said, "Put that where I can't see it or I'll burn it." We put it in the utility room. Anyway, when me and Minnie were walking up after school that Friday, we passed the butcher's and I looked in the window and saw Mr. Davis there with his cleaver, and I thought all about the stress he must be having, a butcher who's scared of liver. So I went in, I said, "Mr. Davis." He said, "Are you here to have a conversation or are you here to buy meat? If it's meat, just point. If it's a conversation, I don't do them." "I think," I said, "I can get you in, up there," and I nodded my head towards the mountain. He put down his cleaver. "What, up there?" And he nodded at the mountain too. "They let me in. They think because I'm a kid I'm harmless. I won't care about, King Arthur and the Grail. Who really rules the world?" And he shushed me. "That's dangerous talk. Their agents are everywhere." Then he came round to my side of the counter and closed the door. "Can you really get me in up there?" "No problem. We can go now if you like. I've got to make up a big barbecue pack for the Nirvana retirement home in Blackford. After that, I'll come with you, and we'll strike a blow for truth, eh?" Mr. Davis came and got me in the Astor Estate 1.9, top speed, a surprising 129 miles per hour. In case you don't know, it's a diesel, but don't let that fool you. It's got very cool headlamps, a tinted rear window, and alloys. It's also got ESP, ABS, and CDC, and IDS, HSA, UCL, and DDS. HSA, by the way, is the Hill Start Assist, which means you get extra time to find the accelerator after you take the foot off the brake, which is handy if you have to drive up Maynard Mountain. DDS is even beastier. It's a deflation detection system, and it tells you if your tyres are going down. That meant we could drive up feeling relaxed about the car. Mr. Davis wasn't relaxed though. He kept leaning forward, like a sheep that's got wind of a packet of quavers. When we got to the top, I could see that Lester wasn't happy. I thought it must be something to do with Mr. Davis. He said, "The painting's ready, but I'm afraid I'm not convinced." He led us through to the room with the easel. Mr. Davis whispered, "Nervous. Knows I'm onto him. See." Lester opened the door and stood back to let us in. "Going to show us a pretty picture then," said Mr. Davis. "One of the ones you don't mind us seeing?" Lester looked a bit bewildered. "It's the one the boy requested. As I mentioned, I'm far from certain myself." "We're not going to see the ones you don't want us to see though, are we?" said Mr. Davis. "Just some pretty picture that anyone can see." "Well, I'm on to you. Don't think I'm not. We all are. We're not easily fooled in Maynard." He was right about the picture being pretty. It also looked very bright. The ripples on the river looked like they were really moving. Mr. Davis said, "Oh, I thought for a minute he must have found the answer to his secret code or whatever." He seemed that surprised. "You see my problem," said Lester. "London has, as you know, suffered from a series of floods. I'm anxious that, in the circumstances, sending a picture of people messing about in boats might be considered insensitive, or even insulting." "Where is that?" said Mr. Davis. "Where's it supposed to be of?" He sounded like he was onto something. Maybe the picture was a clue to where the Holy Grail was hidden. I remember Minnie saying something about a lake with a lady in it. It's a little island in the Seine in the summer of 1869. It's called Camembert because it's shaped like cheese. Monet used to go there with Renoir. They were supposed to be working on sketches to make a large tableau painting for the Academy, but I think the summer and the wine distracted Monet somewhat, and he only completed these small, slightly hurried pochades. It's not without charm or interest. Very nice, said Mr. Davis. Reminds me of Manard back in the day, which is exactly what Mum said, so it must be right. A painting like this would simply not have been possible before then. It was around this time that oil paint became available in metal tubes, so the artist could easily paint in oils outdoors. Almost impossible before then. The tubes made them portable and kept the paint soft and ready to use. In planning to do a great painting back at the studio, later, Monet was thinking like a 19th century artist. But his instincts in his hands were already those of 20th century artist. Not necessarily a good thing, of course, but looking at this does make you reflect. How wonderful it would be to have something so spontaneous and immediate by Michelangelo, of the marketplace in Florence, say, or a picnic in the Umbrian hills. Mr. Davis said, The boats, were they private property, or were they for hire? I'm afraid I have no idea. They look like they're for hire. How much would they charge, do you reckon? Again, I couldn't say. Colour and brushwork are my field. That's more a matter for a municipal park keeper. It was popular, though. The Camembert? Oh, enormously so. But you can see my problem. Water, boats, bad memories for Londoners? I'm afraid. Maybe, I said. Maybe it'll make them see that the floods could be fun, like the man you were talking about who realised that pots and pans were beautiful. Lester looked at me, looked at the painting and said, let's give it a try. And if they're insulted, well, perhaps it's time they were insulted. I thought Mr. Davis would be disappointed, but he drove down the mountain looking even more excited than he'd been on the way up. Even though the visibility wasn't that poor, he turned on the AFL, adaptive forward lighting. It's surprisingly effective. When we got to the garage, I jumped out and opened the gate. He pulled forward and said, Get back in then, boy. I wasn't sure I wanted to. I said, Mum doesn't really like me being out too late. Tell her you're coming with me. I wasn't sure she would see that as an advantage. What does she want? What does he want? Asked Mum. Minnie said, He's found the Holy Grail. He wants Dylan to help him dig it up. I thought, I'm not sure she'll think that's a good thing. Mum looked out the window. Mr. Davis was leaning against his Astra. He gave her a big cheery wave. Well, that would be interesting, said Mum, and he does look very happy. On the other hand, he's a bit unpredictable. She bit her lip. Why don't you both go? Take my mobile with you, just in case. Mr. Davis took us back to his shop, where he stopped and picked up a jemmy, a chainsaw, and a big pair of bolt cutters. He's going to kill someone, whispered Minnie excitedly. I hope it's not us, I whispered back. Then he drove down to Waterloo Park and parked so that his car was facing the gates. He put the headlights on full beam so that he could see the rusty ironwork. Come on then, he said. You bring the chainsaw, boy. It was a bit heavy to carry, but also comforting to have hold of it. Mr. Davis rummaged around with the rusty old chain until he found the padlock. He was hoping it would be rusty too, so he could just yank it off, but it was surprisingly shiny. He gave it to Minnie. Keep hold of that tight as you can and pull. When the chain was taut, he gripped it with bolt cutters and snipped it in two like a string of sausages. The three of us leaned on the gates and pushed them open. It wasn't as hard as I thought it would be. Mr. Davis strode off into the park. When we caught up with him, he was standing in front of the mural, looking up at a panel of his own famous meeting with Elvis in Home and Bargain. He said, You know what? I don't think that was Elvis. I met that day. And then he took his chainsaw off me, revved it up and ran it through the big boards up and down. Elvis in Las Vegas fell flat on the ground, and Elvis in Home and Bargain sort of twisted round and split in two. There it is, he said, pointing through the gap he'd made in the fence. It wasn't the Holy Grail or anything, it was just Manard Boating Lake, but it did look lovely, all velvety and silvery now that it was getting dark. Is it at the bottom of the lake then? Asked Minnie, but Mr. Davis wasn't listening. He'd already walked over to the old boathouse and cut the padlock off that too. He disappeared inside. He seems very focused, said Minnie. Do you think he's found it? He came out again, dragging one of the old rowing boats behind him. Come on then, give us a hand, he shouted. It was pitch black in the boathouse with thick curtains of cobwebs hanging down everywhere. It was the kind of place you'd expect some secret treasure to be hidden. Maybe it was behind the boats. Mr. Davis was pulling another one out. I helped him. Then we pulled another, and another. There were 8 altogether. He started poking and kicking at them. Seems sound enough, he said. Just need a lick of paint, that's all. What about this jetty? He walked out onto the jetty, bouncing up and down on his heels. Not bad, he said, but he wasn't talking to us. He seemed to have forgotten that we were there. I'm freezing, said Minnie, so we went home. The next morning, Mr. Davis's shop didn't open for business.